Let's talk Scott Peterson. Next Friday, on February 25th, his request for a new trial based on juror misconduct because he alleges that juror number 7, Richelle Nice, concealed information and gave false information on her juror questionnaire. So in this video, I'm going to show you, yes, it's been a long week. I'm going to show you Richelle Nice's questionnaire, the actual questionnaire that she filled out and what her answers were. So you can make the call whether you think that she is a stealth juror, whether you think she concealed and answered these questions false so that she could get on the Scott Peterson case. Do you think she's a stealth juror? Hi there, I'm Michele Hagan, and I'm a legal analyst, and I'm a former prosecutor. And I've been providing legal analysis on the Peterson case, as well as many other cases. You can read all about me in the About tab. That'll tell you plenty of my details. So anyway, let's take a look at her questionnaire. Let me give you a little background first. Scott Peterson, one of the reasons he's trying to appeal his conviction, and he was convicted back in 2004 for killing his wife, Laci Peterson, and their unborn child, Connor. So one of the grounds for Peterson's appeal is he's saying that one of the 12 jurors that convicted him, one of them, juror number 7, Richelle Nice, is basically a stealth juror, is what he's alleging, is that she lied to get on the panel or she withheld some information to get on the jury. So when she was summoned, as well as many of these other jurors, for jury duty, they were given a 20-page juror questionnaire, which is what I'm going to go through with you. And they filled out the questionnaire, and based on those answers, they were either automatically excused or they were questioned by counsel to figure out whether or not they could be fair and impartial. And that's what Scott Peterson is saying, that she, because Richelle Nice, juror number 7, didn't disclose that she had been a victim of a crime in a domestic violence case with her ex-boyfriend, that she had also been a party to a lawsuit, which was a temporary restraining order that Richelle Nice got against her ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. And those questions were asked in the questionnaire, which Richelle Nice answered no, she wasn't a victim of a crime, and she answered no, she wasn't involved in a lawsuit. But Scott Peterson is alleging that those answers were false and that she was a stealth juror. Therefore, he did not get a fair and impartial jury because juror number 7 is what he's alleging had a bias against him. In other words, an axe to grind, wanted to convict him, so she lied to get on the panel. So let's take a look at the actual juror questionnaire that Richelle Nice filled out. And that is exhibit number 44. And this was one of the exhibits as part of his writ, as part of his appeal record. And this was a juror questionnaire by Richelle Nice, juror number 7. Okay, so I'm going to go through this with you. Not all of it. I don't want to make this too long. But actually, we all refer to her as juror number 7, but she's actual juror ID number 06756. Kind of an interesting little fact there. Anyway, here's the questionnaire. And this is her handwriting, Richelle Nice's handwriting. And she's juror number 06756. Asked her gender, female, age 34 at the time. This is back in 2004. She filled this out in March of 2004. Place of birth, Stanford. Where did you grow up? East Palo Alto. Where her parents were born, question mark. Where her mother was born, question mark. Do you have a religious preference? She said no. Do you have a religious or philosophical beliefs that interfere with your ability to serve as a juror? No. In terms of your beliefs, she answers somewhat religious. Where is she living? San Mateo, 5 years, all of her life in California. Currently, at that time, was living in East Palo Alto. How long have you lived there? 5 years. She rents. Marital status, living with significant other. How long have you been living with this person? 5 years. What is her? It was actually her boyfriend. He was a mail courier. Then there's other questions. If you've been retired, employed, occupation, if previously married, all these questions. You have children? Yes. Richelle Nice was raising 4 boys at the time, ages 15 to 1. She had 4 sons at the time that she was balancing jury duty and then dealing with. She was sequestered during the time of while they were in deliberation. So 4 kids. Wow. Have you or any of your relatives, close friends, ever lost a child? No. And that's relating to, the circumstance of this case, right? With Connor, the unborn child that was killed. Asked about her parents' occupation. This is to find out whether or not you have any underlying, any life experience that could prohibit you from being impartial. And here she's saying her mother was a drug counselor. Her father passed away, but he was a mailman. Asked about her mother. Do you have any opinions involved in extramarital affairs? She said no. Why is that relevant? Because of the whole Amber Fry situation where Scott Peterson was having an affair while he was married to Laci Peterson. Now they're asking about Richelle's background. What is your highest level of education? Said some college. She did medical assistant, CNA. Have you ever studied, received training in psychology, psychiatric social work? No. Friends who are doctors? No. Training in law enforcement? No. Have you ever had any training or education in the following areas? She indicates yes, banking, drugs and alcohol, medical nursing. And then we look to see what she said. She worked at the Stanford Credit Union. Her work was, her other work was medical assisting, if I can read this correctly, CNA, and home health care. So again, we have jurors fill out these questionnaires because we're trying to figure out if there's anything that would keep you from being fair and impartial to our client, right? So again, asking if she has any special training, and they're trying to find out if she has any law enforcement, any kind of anything to do with this case. Would she have any experience in that area? And again, she answers her mother was a drug methadone counselor, which, by the way, the district attorney's office is claiming that, or has claimed in some of their pleadings, that Richelle Nice is actually a defense juror because of her mother's background. They were trying to say that she, in fact, was a defense juror. So, in other words, quite the opposite of what Peterson is claiming. Peterson is claiming, being a stealth juror, that she was out to convict him, whereas the DA is trying to argue here that because of her mother's counseling background, that might indicate that she would be more pro-defense. So not being against Scott Peterson, in other words. So anyway, did you have any further education? Yes, she did some, looks like some nursing licenses to get her nursing license. What's her present employment? Is a bank teller, full-time, Stanford Credit Union. She's been there a year, helping people with their daily accounts. How long have you worked at your present employment? 1 year. Not supervising. Let's see. Policy decisions, no. So why this questionnaire is relevant is, again, keep in mind, is what she answered on it. And then you can look at this whole questionnaire yourself and you could ask yourself, are these the kind of answers a stealth juror would give? Or are these the kind of answers that is, somebody who would want to lie to get on a panel? So was she forthcoming or was she concealing information? Was she lying about stuff or not, right? So, have you ever considered a pursued a career in law enforcement? She said yes. If yes, when I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer. I took a Citizens Police Academy class. Do you have a bumper sticker on your car? No. How would you consider your political outlook? Middle of the road. Uh, what would you describe as your hobbies? Reading, spending time with my family. Again, we're trying to gather information to figure out whether you're going to be fair and impartial. Then they asked her about whether she engages in a lot of these recreational activities, hiking, golf, fishing, boating. No. Why is that important? Because Scott Peterson was fishing, and that's where Lacie and Connor were found in that area. Do you know of any knowledge of boats? No. Do you currently own a gun? No. What clubs or organizations do you belong to? None. Okay, so now we're getting to the questions that Peterson is claiming she withheld or concealed information or gave false answers. And had they known about the prior domestic violence or the restraining order or the vandalism, and again, you can go look at my previous videos that I did on this Peterson case, in particular the stealth juror one and the other one regarding her declaration, and that'll tell you what her account is what was going on in her mind when she filled out this questionnaire and how she understood these particular questions. So let's get to these questions. So it's question number 54A. Have you ever been involved in a lawsuit other than a divorce proceeding? She said no. Peterson is claiming that the domestic violence was a lawsuit and that the restraining order was a lawsuit, both of which she should have disclosed. And had she disclosed that she had been involved in a domestic violence where she had been a victim while beaten, she was beaten by her boyfriend while pregnant. Now, Peterson is claiming that that shows that she couldn't be impartial, because how could you judge the evidence in a case of a woman, of a Laci Peterson, who was pregnant at the time of the violence and in fact killed, when this same juror, is what Peterson alleging, also underwent violence while she was pregnant and she's supposed to be impartial? That's what Peterson is alleging. That had she told them in this questionnaire about the domestic violence or about the restraining order, that Mark Garagos said, had he known that, she would have been excused. But because they're alleging, Peterson is alleging, she didn't tell them about this, and she answered this question that they're arguing, she concealed it, and she gave a false answer. Therefore, he was denied his right to a fair trial, which includes having all 12 jurors be impartial. So have you ever been involved in a lawsuit? She said in her declaration that she didn't consider the domestic violence case to be a lawsuit because she interpreted lawsuits to involve money and property. So in her mind, the domestic violence case and the restraining order had nothing to do with the lawsuit. So she answered this no. Okay. If yes, were you a plaintiff, a defendant, or both? She didn't answer it because she didn't think that this question applied, because she, in her mind, didn't believe she was involved in a lawsuit. Even though the restraining order, I'm sure they may bring this out in the hearing if it's admissible. In the restraining order, it actually says plaintiff and defendant. But she didn't see the restraining order as a lawsuit. Again, because she only sees lawsuits as involving money and property, not regarding being harassed by your boyfriend's ex-girlfriend or involved in the domestic violence case. She doesn't see those as lawsuits. So she didn't answer this question. Okay, 55. What is your main source of news? She said television. What kind of books do you read? Nonfiction. Again, we're trying to figure out, where you sit as a juror. What's your life experience? Do you have any bias? That's what we're trying to ferret out, to figure out whether you can be an impartial juror and make the decision, your decision, based solely on the evidence and the testimony and applying the law, not based on other stuff outside the courtroom or other life experiences, right? They asked her if she read any magazine. She says Cosmo, Ebony, Fashion Magazine. What television, radio programs do you view and listen to on a regular basis? She said Channel 2. Well, that's a shout out to KTVU, right? Number 59, did you use a computer? Yes. How often do you access the internet? I only use the internet for email. Again, we're trying to figure out, what kind of activities, what kind of juror could you be? If you access the internet, what sites do you visit? She said Yahoo. Again, this is back in 2004. Do you log on in the internet chat rooms? No. So they're trying to figure out if she's going to be, talking to people about this case, or how she talked to people. Has she made some judgments already? Again, this is just a jury selection. They haven't heard any evidence yet. They're just trying to figure out whether or not Richelle Nice could be fair and impartial. Has she prejudged the case? Has she decided to convict Peterson or not to convict him? That's what they're trying to find out. How often do you read the newspaper? Seldom or never. What section of newspaper do you read? Other sections. How often, if at all, do you tune into cable news? Never. Have you seen any movies in the last 6 months? No. Well, she's busy raising 4 boys, right? And working full-time job. Do you know of anyone in your household? And again, they're asking whether or not they're watching any of these talking heads. Okay, do you currently or have you in the past owned any pets, cat or dog? And again, that relates to Lacie was walking the dog at the time that she went missing, or the dog was found on a leash afterwards and Lacie was missing. Have you ever been in the military? No. You ever involved in a court-martial, etc.? No. Combat? No. Law enforcement, they're asking her. Do you have any friends in the sheriff's department? U.S. Attorney's Office, etc. And the reason they're asking that is to find out, is because several of the witnesses were going to be police officers, right? So they want to find out if she has any connection. She says no. And again, this 20-page, 116 questionnaire was filled out by all the prospective questionnaires. And I think at the time that Richelle was up to be asked particular questions by the counsel, I think they had already interviewed 300 jurors. It took them over 41 days to get a panel of jurors together. I mean, they had called up several panels. A lot of people were excused. A lot of people were excused. And so it took them quite a while. So have you or any of your family members ever been employed or volunteered in criminal defense work at the public defenders? Again, they're trying to figure out if she would have any, bias towards or against the public defender's office. Have you or any members donated money or signed a petition for people accused of crimes? So they're trying to figure out, what kind of activities she's been engaged in. Have any of your relatives or friends been arrested, charged with a crime? She said yes. She has a brother who's in prison. So again, that goes to the DA's argument that she wasn't a stealth juror. She was actually a defense juror, right? Because her mother was a drug counselor and here her brother's in prison, right? So maybe she's sympathetic towards Peterson. So question 69, if you answered yes, was there ever a matter handled by police? She said no, feeling I was too young. Are you personally acquainted with any of the judges, prosecutors? No. Are you a member of MAD or Neighborhood Watch? No. Have you ever participated? Here's one of the questions that Peterson alleges that she answered incorrectly in concealed information and to conceal her bias against him. Question number 72. Have you ever participated in a trial as a party, a witness, or interested observer? She said no. Well, there's the restraining order from 2000 against the boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. Wasn't disclosed. She was involved in victim in a domestic violence case, unfortunately. She didn't disclose that either. So they're saying that should have been, this answer was incorrect. So she's concealing her bias by lying about that. Number 74, have you or any member of your family or close friend ever been a victim or a witness to any crime? She answered no. Well, there's the domestic violence case where you were a victim. She answered no. Restraining order against the ex-girlfriend, the boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, she didn't disclose that either. So Peterson is alleging that had she disclosed that, she would have been excused. Right? But what does Richelle Nice say in her declaration? What's Richelle Nice's version of what happened? She says in the declaration, and again, you can look at my prior video on this. She says she didn't consider herself to be a victim in the domestic violence case because no one reached out and contacted her. Nobody from the police department. Her boyfriend pled no contest to one of the counts of battery. She doesn't consider herself to be a victim. She was raised in an environment that was difficult. There was a lot of things going on. She didn't consider the behavior that her boyfriend engaged in with her to constitute a crime. So she didn't see herself as a victim. She didn't see that as a crime. Again, you can look at her declaration for her explanation. She doesn't see herself as a victim. So she didn't think she had to talk about that. She didn't think she had to disclose. That's what I'm sure she's going to say in what she said in her declaration. And if you answered yes to the previous question, well, she answered no. So was the crime reported to the police? She doesn't even have to talk about it. She didn't see in her mind that the domestic violence or the restraining or even the vandalism case were a crime or that she was a victim to a crime. Now they ask her questions about the criminal justice system. Again, trying to find out if she has any bias against either the prosecution or the defense. And these are kind of interesting. I mean, these are juror questionnaires that, can be something that people want to look at to figure out, what kind of questions would they ask you if you were going to be summoned for jury duty. But anyway, so question number 76. Did you or for whatever reason have any negative feelings regarding law enforcement? So are you going to have any prejudice against any police officers that take the stand or any law enforcement officers? She said no. Do you have any opinions or feelings about the effectiveness of law enforcement? No. Again, they're trying to figure out whether or not you're going to be pro-cop or anti-cop, right? Would your attitudes of a criminal justice system influence you in favor of the prosecution or the defense? Again, did she have any opinions about that? She said no. If selected as a juror in this case, will you be able to follow the court's instruction that the defendant arrested for any offenses presumed innocent? She said yes. If selected as a juror in a case, will you be able to follow the court's instruction that such a defendant is innocent until the state proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Yes. So they're trying to figure out if she's going to follow the law. She said yes. 81, police officers are more likely to tell the truth. She said she disagreed. 82, the police are too quick to arrest a suspect in cases that are a significant amount of publicity or pressure to find a perpetrator. Are the police too quick to arrest? She strongly disagreed. Given all the publicity for months, we saw it on the news. Where's Lacie? Was Scott fleeing to Mexico? When he dyed his hair, had a bunch of cash and his brother's ID. It's constantly on the news. Where's Lacie? Where's Connor? Right? A lot of publicity. So she's being asked whether the police are too quick to arrest. In other words, did they rush to judgment and arrest Scott Peterson? And she's saying no. She strongly disagrees with the amount of publicity or pressure to find a perpetrator. How much confidence do you have in the following types of evidence? So this is to find out whether you're going to think, as a juror, whether you're going to just throw out evidence because you don't believe in DNA evidence, or you don't believe in circumstantial evidence, or you don't believe in fingerprint experts, or, we have to find that out to figure out whether you're going to be a fair and impartial juror. You're going to weigh the evidence. So they asked her, how much confidence do you have? Well, she has a lot in DNA, forensic, chemical residue, fingerprints, etc. She has some in expert witness testimony and some in circumstantial. Interesting answers, right? If you check some or not much, please explain why. I would need to hear and see before I make a choice. Does that sound like someone who's prejudging the evidence? Or that's a stealth juror? It's up to you to decide, right? And it'll be up to the judge to decide in the hearing. 84, how have you ever served on a jury before? No. And the reason we ask that question is we want to find out how much experience you've had as a juror, or if you've been a juror. Okay, and then let's see. 87, do you know or recognize the defendant Scott Peterson, the prosecutors, the defense attorney, the judge, or any other court personnel? And she answers yes. If yes, please explain. Well, who doesn't? In other words, she's answering, and she explains this in her declaration. Well, who doesn't know who Scott Peterson is? It's been on the news for months, right? So if you think about this, if you wanted to be a stealth juror, would you say that you knew about Scott Peterson? Wouldn't you say, oh, no, I know nothing about this case. I know nothing, right? And she's saying, yeah, I know. I've been watching the news, and yes. Well, who doesn't know Scott Peterson? Is that an answer a potential stealth juror would give? Or maybe a stealth juror would give that kind of an answer. Okay, 88. There are two types of evidence, direct and circumstantial. Do you have any attitudes or belief that would prevent you from relying on the circumstantial evidence in a murder case? You know, nobody was there to see who killed Lacie and Connor. There's no eyewitness. It's a circumstantial case, right? Based on the circumstances of what happened, the jury convicted Scott Peterson. Number 89, the judge will instruct you that both direct and circumstantial evidence are entitled to equal weight. Will you follow the instruction? Yes. Because if we have a juror who says, no, I'm not going to listen to what the judge has to say. I don't care what the law has to say. Well, that juror can be excused, right? You would want that juror excused because they're not going to be fair and impartial if they're not going to listen to the law or the judge. Okay, 90, do you know or have you read or seen anything about this case? She said yes. Now, if you were a stealth juror, as Peterson alleges, don't you think a stealth juror who wanted to get on this jury and wanted to convict or not convict Peterson, but had their own agenda, didn't care what the law was going to be, they had their own agenda, right? Would they answer this question? Have you heard anything about this case? They answer the question yes. Maybe they'd answer the question no, because they wanted to stealthily get on the panel, right? They didn't want anyone to ask them questions. 91, if yes, what have you read or seen or heard about this case? Just the basics, she answers. Okay, maybe that's forthcoming and you know, doesn't look to be concealing anything there. 92, if yes, when did you first hear, see, or read anything about this case? The day it was on TV about her disappearing. So she knew, Richelle Nice knew from the very beginning what was going on. 93. If yes, please indicate where you heard something about this. On the TV, she said all of it on the TV. PA Daily, it looks like in the newspaper daily. So she was well aware of all the news reporting and the amount of worldwide attention that was on this case. 94. If you have been exposed to pretrial publicity about this case, it would be natural to form your opinions about what you've heard. Have you formed any preliminary opinion about this case? She answers no. Now, of course, Peterson could argue, well, of course she's not going to answer yes, because then she'll get kicked off the panel. 95. Have you formed or expressed any opinions about the guilt or innocence of Scott Peterson? She checked no, not enough information to decide. 96. Has anyone expressed any opinion as to the guilt or innocence to you? She said yes and yes. She could have said no. Then no one's expressed any opinion of his guilt or innocence. Wouldn't that be more stealthily? Is that even a word? I don't know. Again, this is all just my opinion and my interpretation. I could be completely wrong on this stuff, but I thought it would be interesting to see what her actual answers were, okay? Instead of what is being reported. 97. The jurors that sit on this case will be instructed that they must base their decision entirely on the evidence produced in court, not from any outside source or pre-existing opinions or attitudes. Not from any outside source. Can you do that despite what you have read, heard, or seen about this case? She said no. Can you, despite that, what you've heard, can you do that despite what you've heard or seen about this case? She answered no. It's interesting. Maybe the answer should have been, wait, let me reread this. The jurors that sit on this case will be instructed that they must base the decision entirely on the evidence, not from any outside source or pre-existing opinion or attitudes. Okay, you have to make your decision based on the evidence in court. Can you do that despite what you've heard, read, or seen? She answered no. That's an interesting answer. Wasn't it supposed to be yes? But anyway, 97. Do you think that the news media always presents a story accurately? She said no. Okay, 98. If you've already formed an opinion about this case, can you set it aside and base your decision entirely on the evidence presented? She said yes. 99. Despite anything you may have heard, read, or seen, can you still be fair to the prosecution and defense? She said yes. She said yes. She could be fair to the prosecution and defense. Now, that could be argued that shows she has no bias. 100. If selected as a juror, will you be able to follow the court's instruction to avoid any news coverage about this case beginning today? Yes. Right? So they want the juror, the court wants the jurors to only consider the evidence presented before them, not be watching any news, right? Question 101. Is there anything else that you feel the court should know about your qualifications? She answered no. Is there any reason you would not be fair in this case? She answered no. So she's telling the court and counsel she would be fair. 103. If after hearing all the evidence, you're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of one or more counts, would you be able to return a verdict for guilty? Yes, she says. 104. During the trial, you may have become aware members of the defendant's family or members of the victim's family will generally be present in the courtroom during the proceedings. Will you be able to ignore their presence and consider only the evidence in determining innocence or guilt? She said yes. Number 105. Have you seen the movie The Perfect Husband, the Laci Peterson story? No. Again, they're trying to find out what she's been exposed to figure out whether or not she is prejudging or tainted, to make sure that both sides get a fair trial here and the defendant gets a fair trial. If you have, has it affected your view at all? She answers no. Okay, now these are questions regarding death penalty, because they also had to be, each one of these jurors had to be qualified as a call them death penalty juror. In other words, we need to find out whether or not you have any opinions about the death penalty. And granted, there are people that will who are opposed to death penalty, and those people would be, and many were, excused because they wouldn't be able to reach a death penalty decision, right? So the court is asking you the questions regarding your feelings about the death penalty. I'll let you read the rest of this. By asking about your views on the penalty now, the court is not suggesting that the jury in this case will find the defendant guilty, but here are the questions. Will asking questions concerning your views about the death penalty without the possibility of parole suggest you that the defendant must be guilty? She answered no. Do you understand that do you understand that the only task jurors are asked to perform during the first phase of the trial is for the judge guilt or innocence? Because it's a two-part. One, you have to find whether or not Scott Peterson is guilty or not guilty. Then if he's guilty, then you make the decision as to what the sentence is going to be, whether the death penalty applies or not. Do you understand that there is a penalty trial The only two possible sentences will be death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. She said yes, she understood that. 107. What are your feelings regarding the death penalty? And she writes, if without a doubt someone did something that bad, all the evidence was there, then if that is a sentence given, the person reads, oh, the person needs to have that sentence. Let me read that again. If without a doubt someone did something that bad, all the evidence was there, then if that is the sentence given, the person needs to have that sentence. Okay, so she's saying if that's, if the evidence shows that, then that's the sentence they're going to get, either death penalty or life without possibility of parole. Question number 108. What are your feelings regarding life in prison without the possibility? Same as above. If without a doubt, and she's applying without a doubt, although the standard is reasonable doubt. Without a doubt, all evidence is there. Okay, 109. How would you rate your attitude towards the death penalty? She supports it. 110. Would it be difficult for you to vote for the death penalty if the crime was guilty? The guilty party's first defense. She said depends on the evidence. So again, is that showing a stealth juror or a truthful juror? Question 111. Briefly describe any article or books that influenced your feelings about death penalty. She said none. Have you ever been involved in any way, such as circulating a petition in support of the death penalty? She said no. 113. Have you ever been involved in any way, such as circulating a petition opposing the death penalty? She said no. Over the last 10 years, have your views on the death penalty changed? She said no. We're almost done here. Question 115. Do you have any moral, religious, or philosophical opposition to the death penalty so strong that you'd be unable to impose a death penalty? She said no. Question 116. Do you have any moral, religious, or philosophical beliefs in favor of the death penalty so strong that you would be unable to impose life without possibility of parole? She said no. And she answered all of these questions under penalty of perjury. And that's why she did not want to take the stand in the upcoming hearing. She wanted to get immunity, which is what the district attorney is offering her. I'm sure it's out of abundance of caution in case, because perjury, in other words, did you lie? And if you lied, when you're told to give these questions to be true, and if you lie about that under penalty of perjury, you could be charged with perjury. So she'll take the stand only if she's given immunity, just in case there's anything that she lied about or a prosecutor wants to charge her with penalty, right? So she said, I declare under penalty of perjury that the answers set forth in the questionnaire are true and correct to the best of my knowledge, information, and belief. True and correct to the best of her knowledge, information, and belief, right? So again, she did not see herself as a victim. She did not see what happened to her as crimes. And she didn't see a restraining order, domestic violence to relate to a lawsuit. She didn't see those as lawsuits because she only saw a lawsuit as something involving money or property. So, does that indicate to you that she's a stealth juror? I mean, what do you think? What's your opinion? Please comment below and let me know. It's up to the judge to decide. And again, the defense has a burden of proof to start with. The defense is going to have to show that Richelle Nice, by her concealing this information that they say, or giving false information, although the district attorney is saying this was an honest mistake, she understood those words to mean something different. She wasn't concealing anything. She's not a stealth juror, is what I'm sure the DA is going to be arguing. But Scott Peterson has to show that she is, right? That what her concealing the information is concealing her bias, right? Her not telling them about her being pregnant and beaten by a boyfriend or involved in a restraining order. Her not telling the defense about that was her concealing her bias because she wanted to be on this panel. Probably because she, it was getting a lot of media attention, and maybe this is maybe some way to be famous or to get a big book deal out of this, or is that why people sit as stealth jurors? So the judge is going to have to make a decision. Again, it's a pretty high standard. Prejudicial misconduct. Does this misconduct rise to the level of being prejudicial? In other words, violating Scott Peterson's right to a fair and impartial juror, right? So if the Peterson is able to show that it's this not answering these questions correctly and not disclosing this, if Peterson is able to show that it's prejudicial misconduct, then it's up to the district attorney then to rebut it and say, no, there's no prejudice here. There's no actual bias by Richelle Nice. She simply misunderstood these questions. So take a look again at this. Take a look again at her answers and ask yourself, are these answers of someone who's trying to conceal information? Maybe. This is someone that looks like a stealth juror, someone who lied to get on a panel because of, it's a high profile, it's getting a lot of media attention, and, or you have an axe to grind. You found out that Lacie was pregnant with Connor, and you think the person who did it should spend the rest of their time in jail or convicted of this. I mean, who knows? All the different agendas that potential stealth jurors could have. But does this, this is a decision the judge is going to have to make, whether or not what Richelle's answers were, Richelle Nice's answers, whether it shows that she was biased against Scott Peterson, that she had an axe to grind, she wanted to convict him, so she concealed information on the written questionnaire and in voir dire. And throughout the whole trial, she never told anybody about this. And because of that, Scott Peterson was denied a right to a fair trial. And that's what Peterson is alleging. And that's what the judge is going to have to make a decision, whether or not this is prejudicial misconduct. And if so, was Peterson denied his right to a fair trial? And if he was, if the judge finds that, then Peterson's convictions get thrown out and he faces a new trial. So let me know what you think. I hope this has been informative to you. I thought it would be interesting to look at her questionnaire. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. Thanks again for watching.